Obviously, any words to make sense of them depends on how we define those words. So the way I'll be using presence tonight, I just mean the manifest world, everything that we can see, think, taste, touch, everything, including these body minds, everything in the world of form. Trees, bugs, birds, sky, bodies, thoughts, feelings, everything. Calling that presence. So I know that, sort of being present, feeling the sense of presence is a useful practice as we become more sensitive to the body. But we're still talking about a physical, energetic experience, the sense of sort of quiet presence. It feels good. The aliveness in our hands or feet. All of that's a useful practice to become more sensitive to this energetic form that we inhabit. So that's all fine, but we're still talking about the world of presence, right? And then we can talk about absence. So absence doesn't mean void, null, utter darkness. It doesn't mean that, right? It's sort of like if you were used to sitting down at the dinner table every night, sort of like people used to do. And every night on the table there would be a salt shaker. And one night the salt shaker wasn't there. So you could say, well, the salt shaker was absent. But there's still something present. I mean, what's still present is, the possibility, the likelihood, the probability of the salt shaker being, the possibility of that happening. And so, in a sense, there's a certain presence, even though the salt shaker is actually absent. So, absence in that sense, it's not nothing, right? It still has some potentiality, right? So on a bigger scale, much bigger scale, much bigger scale, we can talk about absence as infinite potential to become presence, to become everything in this creation. So in that sense, it's not at all nothing, because it has the infinite potentiality to become everything. So it's not, it's not empty. It's just not yet in the world of form. Okay? So in some traditions, Zen tradition, there was a famous Zen master that talked about the unborn, that which is never born into this world of form. On a sort of more localized level, our experience of, since we don't have access to the ultimate absence, the ultimate source of existence, because it's not an object, we'll never be able to see it as an object other than as a conception. We can create that image in our mind, our description in our mind, but that's actually not it. Anything that we can create conceptually will be vastly less than the ultimate reality of existence. But on what we can experience as humans in this form is this capacity of awareness, which is in the direction of absence, right? Lying beyond the capacity of awareness to recognize. So we can learn to function as this awareness, from this awareness. It's actually what's happening already. All of us are already living as an expression of consciousness. But we may take ourselves to be, no, it's me, personal, me. So this is what we can know is the sense of the presence of our experience, everything that we can see and experience through our senses, experience through inhabiting, in a sense, this body-mind, so we can feel internally into this body. We can feel when it gets hurt, when it's in pain, when it's had a full meal and is satisfied, when it, hears a good joke and laughs, when we think, when we remember, and so on. All of this is our awareness experiencing the world of form. So it can appear like there's two things happening. There is the appearance, and then there is that which is aware of whatever the appearance is. So in that sense, we can say that awareness is more fundamental than the appearance, because the appearance is dependent on that capacity of awareness. We could have the same eyesight, we could have the same hearing organs, we could have the same sense of touch in the body, but if there was nobody home to recognize that, to be aware of it, we wouldn't know that any of that was happening. We wouldn't, without awareness, we wouldn't even know that we didn't know that there was a body present. There would be nothing. Not even aware of that nothingness. There wouldn't even be that. So the awareness is the essential, fundamental capacity of this body-mind, and it is aware of whatever we see or touch or taste or feel or so on, think. So we could say that that is like a fundamental duality. We have the appearances within awareness, and we have the awareness that is aware of them. And so in spirituality, a lot comes down to, what do we take ourselves to be? Where is our identity truly housed? And for most people, it's like, well, it's me, and how do you define me? Well, it's, what I think, what I feel, what I've experienced, my resume, my hopes, my dreams, my fears, and so on. That's me. But in a very real sense, that is on the perimeter, because there's something that notices that. So when we truly see that distinction, that there is this capacity of awareness upon which every other experience depends. Perhaps a useful metaphor is if you were standing outside or walking outside on a sunny day, there would be a shadow. Your shadow would be cast upon the ground. So you could look at the shadow, and somebody might say, well, is that shadow real? And again, it comes down to how we define real. But if we say, well, I can see it, it has a certain shape, a certain color, it moves when I move, has these are all attributes of the shadow. So in that sense, it's real. It's an appearance. But on the other hand, that appearance is entirely dependent on me walking down the road, and it's entirely dependent on the sun and no clouds in the sky. And so in that sense, it doesn't have independent existence, right? It has existence, but it's dependent on these other factors. So in that way, you could say, well, it doesn't have independent reality. So in the same way, we could look at, these body minds, and, we can have the experience of being this body mind and knowing what thoughts are happening in my head. But what is actually aware of that is something that isn't necessarily limited to this body mind. So I know science tells us that this capacity of awareness or consciousness is generated by the molecules, the neurons in our head, their chemistry, their electrical circuitry, and so on. And voila, there you go, consciousness. And there's a correlation, right, between, seeing a certain color or a certain pattern, and a certain area of the brain lights up. But that doesn't prove that consciousness originates there. The question is fundamental to spirituality, either this fundamental quality of being consciously present for whatever happens, either it is a function of brain cells or it's not. This comes down to what we as, let's say, spiritual seekers are pondering. What is our most fundamental existence? And one thing that's clear is that if it's a product of brain cells, one day the body will die, the brain will die, and therefore consciousness would die, and end of story. The other possibility is that awareness is singular, that it is the one thing that we can be certain about. We can be certain about that consciousness exists because we can't deny it. We'd have to be conscious to even consider the possibility of denying it. You can't say, you can utter the words, but you can't truthfully say, no, I am not conscious. You have to be conscious to say that, to say anything, even to say I'm not conscious. So this consciousness is the fundamental fact of our existence. What is less certain is that any of these appearances have independent existence, including this body-mind. We can notice this body-mind, but the only thing that notices it is consciousness. So it too, in addition to everything else, it too is an appearance within consciousness. So just like your shadow, is it real? Yes, but it doesn't have independent existence. We like to think that it does. We like to think that it's me as a separate entity running around in this big, somewhat mysterious world. But our actual direct observation of it is that I am aware of this experience. The experience is happening within this awareness that I am. In other words, everything that I've ever experienced has been an appearance within the awareness that I am. So in that way, in the East, you can see why some people say that this world is a dream. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist any more than saying our shadow doesn't exist. But it doesn't exist in the way that science has told us that it does. It doesn't exist as a fundamental principle upon which everything else is constructed. That would be a materialistic view of existence, of life. That they're basically building blocks, atoms, subatomic particles that sort of coalesce in these different forms, and life ensues. But that would be inconsistent with most recent physicists' view of the universe. It's now been quantum physics has been around for 100 years now, but we're still sort of trying to catch up to what it is truly pointing to. But that may be as it may, but what we can experience in our own direct experience without relying on anybody else's say-so is that consciousness is present. And we can investigate that, see what that really is. And that's a really useful place to begin any real sincere investigation into the nature of what this life is really about. What can I be certain of? Well, we don't want to start on a bunch of beliefs. So what can we know for sure? one of the things that may be true is that when I really get down to it and really look at it, I, I don't really know anything with total certainty. But at least that statement could be known with certainty. So in that way, it's a decent place to start. Socrates thought so. You know, I know only one thing, and that is, I know nothing. Didn't mean that he didn't know how to tie his shoes or get home or whatever, but it meant that on the deepest possible level, we don't know. You know, and we can investigate, but when upon investigation, what happens is not an accumulation of knowledge, it's actually a deconstruction of things that we thought we were quite sure of. And we find that actually there's much less that we know for sure. We can have opinions, that's fine, we can talk about them. As long as we don't take them too seriously, there's not a problem. But when we're getting serious about finding what is truly living this life, what is actually having this experience, then where we can start from is just this sense, this raw sense of being, just this sense of existing, because it's the one thing that we can't deny. So this is what Nisargadatta and others have talked about, just this sense of I am, just this staying with the sense of raw beingness without any definition, without any qualification, just to feel into that sense. As a doorway, it's not the end of the road to go around repeating as a mantra, I am. But it is a doorway to that felt sense of being. At first, when we begin to discover what this formlessness is, this awareness that is without attributes, it's not of the world of form. It's the one thing that's not of the world of form. But it is able to hold the entire world of form within awareness. Everything that you've ever experienced in your entire life has happened within your awareness. Everything. Looking up at the moon at night, it's still within your awareness. The bright circular object that we project out into the sky is actually reconstructed inside your own head, and you're aware of that. So your entire experience is happening, is appearing within awareness. So that's a good, solid, fundamental place to start to inquire what is that capacity. And the more we investigate that, we find out we never really know, because we can never get a good look at it. You know, we can never sort of, you know, as a personal me with these two eyes and this brain, I can't really run around and get behind this awareness in order to get a good look at it. Because it's always more fundamental than that. It's watching every struggle that we make to try to get a good look at it, get a good fix at it. I want to sort of take this awareness, see it, and take it home with me. It's not subject to that. It's always more fundamental. And gradually we relax into it because it is our deepest nature. It's already present, already complete. We don't have to become worthy of it. We don't have to sort of become something other than what we are. It's a matter of recognition. It's not actually an attainment, not even a high state. Sorry to disappoint, but it's very nice, but not a high state. It is as it is. But there is peace, there is silence, there is contentment, there is joy. That's true.